A cold steel barrel hovered inches from her temple, illuminated only by the blinding flashes of red and blue police lights. The officer laughed, a harsh, mocking sound that echoed through the darkness. "A federal agent? You?" he sneered, kicking her FBI credentials into the dirt. Moments later, those same flashing lights would reveal a very different scene. This time, he would be the one begging for mercy as handcuffs closed around his wrists. The dashboard clock inside the unremarkable Ford Taurus glowed with a faint, clinical green light. Supervisory Special Agent Maren Whitaker rubbed the back of her neck, trying to work out the knot of tension that had been building throughout a long-running investigation. Still in her 30s, Maren was already a seasoned veteran of the Bureau and the youngest black woman ever appointed to lead a joint anti-corruption task force from the Philadelphia field office. This night was supposed to be the quiet conclusion to an exhausting and dangerous operation. Maren guided the Taurus through the winding, heavily wooded roads of Oak Brook Valley, an ultra-wealthy suburb where the perfectly manicured lawns seemed as heavily guarded as bank vaults. She had just completed a grueling surveillance assignment connected to Operation Silent Ledger, a massive federal investigation into a local money laundering syndicate with deep, rotting roots inside the area's law enforcement agencies. She was exhausted. A faded gray hoodie covered the Kevlar vest beneath it, while her service weapon remained securely holstered against her right hip. All she wanted was to reach the safe house, take a hot shower, and sleep. But Oak Brook Valley had a reputation, and Maren knew it well. It was the kind of town where luxury SUVs traveled freely without attracting a second glance. A dusty Ford Taurus driven by a black woman in the middle of the night, however, was treated as an anomaly, a target. Parked in the shadows beside an abandoned roadside station off Route 119 sat Officer Grant Huxley. Huxley was a longtime veteran of the Oak Brook Valley Police Department. He wore his badge not as a shield meant to protect the public, but as a crown that placed him above everyone else. Over the years, he had accumulated 14 use-of-force complaints and several racial profiling lawsuits, yet a powerful police union and a chief who had perfected the art of looking the other way had allowed him to remain on the streets. Inside his patrol cruiser, Huxley watched Maren's Taurus pass his concealed position. His eyes narrowed. He entered the license plate number into his onboard computer. The system hesitated before displaying a generic restricted return code, the type commonly assigned to undercover federal vehicles so local officers could not accidentally expose active operations. But Huxley did not see a federal vehicle. He saw a computer error, a stolen plate, or simply an excuse to stop someone he had already decided did not belong in his town. He threw the cruiser into drive. The heavy engine roared to life as he accelerated onto the dark pavement. Inside the Taurus, Maren glanced into her rearview mirror. The sudden glare of high-beam headlights flooded the cabin. She did not accelerate, she did not touch the brakes, she maintained the posted speed limit, keeping both hands steady on the steering wheel. Then the red and blue lights ignited, violently tearing through the darkness. A brief blast from the siren ordered her to pull over. Maren released a deep, exhausted breath. "Seriously?" she muttered. She activated her turn signal, guided the Taurus smoothly onto the gravel shoulder, and shifted the car into park. She lowered all four windows. It was a safety procedure she had learned early in her career, designed to reassure an approaching officer that no one was hiding in the rear seats. She switched on the interior dome light and placed both hands firmly at the top of the steering wheel. A microscopic communications earpiece in her right ear crackled to life. It was Special Agent Reed Calloway, her Overwatch officer, positioned inside a mobile command center several miles away. "Boss, we can see that you've been stopped on Route 119, Calloway said quietly. "Do you want the local liaison to make a call?" "Negative, Reed," Maren whispered, barely moving her lips. "It's probably just a traffic stop. Keep the channel open, but let me handle it. I don't want to expose the operation if this officer has a scanner." "Copy that, we're listening." Through her side mirror, Maren watched Officer Huxley step out of his cruiser. He did not approach calmly. He advanced with a practiced, aggressive swagger, his right hand resting heavily on the grip of his holstered Glock. He removed a large metal flashlight from his belt and raised it beside his shoulder. When he reached the rear of the Taurus, Huxley deliberately struck the trunk with his bare palm. The technique was sometimes used to leave fingerprints on a vehicle in case the driver fled or attacked the officer, but Huxley hit the car with enough force to make the impact sound like a gunshot inside the quiet cabin. Maren did not flinch. Huxley reached the driver's window and immediately aimed the blinding flashlight beam directly into her eyes. "License, registration, and proof of insurance," he barked, his voice already dripping with hostility. Maren narrowed her eyes against the harsh light but kept her voice calm and carefully controlled. Good evening, officer. My credentials and identification are inside the breast pocket beneath my jacket. I am also legally armed. My service weapon is holstered on my right hip. How would you like me to proceed? The words service weapon seemed to trigger something violent and irrational inside Huxley. He did not hear the professionalism in her voice. He did not recognize the deliberate language used by trained law enforcement personnel. He saw only a black woman in a hoodie driving an ordinary car through his wealthy town, telling him she had a gun. "Do not move," Huxley screamed. His voice cracked with manufactured panic as he took a large step backward and drew his weapon with terrifying speed. Metal scraped against leather. Suddenly, Marin found herself staring directly into the barrel of a 9mm handgun. "Keep your hands on the wheel. If you move, I'll blow your head off." Inside the command center, Calloway felt his blood turn cold as the audio transmission reached him. "Boss," he said sharply through the earpiece, "give me your status. Do you need tactical support?" "Hold," Marin breathed, speaking just loudly enough for her microphone to capture the word. To Huxley, however, it sounded as though she were whispering to herself in fear. "What did you say?" he roared. Using the hand holding the flashlight, he aggressively tapped the barrel of his weapon against the window frame. "Get out of the vehicle. Move slowly, or I swear to God." Marin's heart rate remained controlled. She had confronted cartel gunmen in Juarez and armed human traffickers in Detroit. A power-hungry local officer in a wealthy suburban district was dangerous, but he was also predictable. "Officer," Marin said, lowering her voice until it carried unmistakable authority, "I am going to release my seatbelt with my left hand. Then I will step out of the vehicle. I am an off-duty federal agent. You need to lower your weapon." "Shut your mouth and get out." Huxley's finger tightened dangerously against the trigger. Marin slowly moved her left hand and pressed the seatbelt release. She opened the driver's door and stepped into the freezing night air. Her hands remained raised at shoulder level, her palms open and visible. The moment she was completely outside the car, Huxley lunged forward. He slammed his forearm into her back and drove her violently against the side of the Taurus. The metal flexed beneath the impact of her body. "Spread your legs," he ordered. He kicked her ankles apart and pressed the barrel of his handgun directly against her spine. "Officer," Marin said, her cheek resting against the cold metal of the car roof, "you are making a catastrophic mistake. My badge is in my left pocket." Huxley scoffed. "Of course it is. You people always have a story." He drove his knee into the back of her thigh, pinning her awkwardly against the sedan. With his free hand, he aggressively searched her right side and immediately found the grip of her Glock 19. He ripped it from the holster with a triumphant grunt. "Well, well, well," Huxley sneered. He stepped back slightly while keeping his own weapon trained on her chest. Then he tossed her gun onto the hood of the Taurus, where it struck the metal with a loud clatter. Carrying a concealed weapon, resisting an officer, failure to comply. "You're looking at years in prison, sweetheart." "Check the left pocket," Marin commanded. There was no fear in her voice, only an absolute, chilling certainty that made Huxley even angrier. She did not sound like a victim. She sounded like a superior. Infuriated by her tone, Huxley reached into her left jacket pocket and violently pulled out a leather credential case. He opened it with one hand and directed the flashlight toward its contents. Embedded inside the black leather was the heavy gold shield of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Above it sat a laminated identification card displaying Marin's composed face, the seal of the Department of Justice, and her title, Supervisory Special Agent. For a brief instant, the night became completely silent. Then Huxley threw back his head and laughed. It was a loud, ugly, barking laugh that echoed among the empty trees. "This is unbelievable." He shook his head and stared at the badge before looking back at Marin with open contempt. "An FBI agent, you? I've seen fake identification before, but this is something special. Where did you get it, the dark web, or did you print it at the local library?" "Officer Huxley," Marin said, turning her head just enough to look directly at him. She had already memorized his name and badge number. "If you contact dispatch and ask them to verify my credential number, 774 Alpha Niner, they will connect you with the regional FBI field office. They will confirm my identity. They will also inform you that you are currently assaulting a federal officer." "Shut up," Huxley shouted. His amusement vanished, instantly replaced by rage. He hated that she understood police terminology. He hated her calmness. Most of all, he hated that she was not afraid of him. He shoved the credential case into his own pocket as though it were illegal contraband. "You're not a federal agent," he hissed. He leaned close enough for Marin to smell the stale coffee and wintergreen mints on his breath. "You're just another criminal driving through my town who thought a fake badge would get her out of a gun charge. Put your hands behind your back." Marin did not move. "I am telling you this for your own protection. Call it in." "I said put your hands behind your back." Huxley grabbed her left wrist and twisted it behind her with enough force to strain her shoulder. Inside her earpiece, Calloway's voice had lost all professional restraint. Marin, he has gone too far. I'm deploying the tactical teams. They're almost there. Hold, Marin whispered again, gritting her teeth against the pain. Who are you talking to? Huxley demanded. He seized her right arm and dragged it behind her back. Cold, jagged steel handcuffs snapped brutally around her wrists. The ratchets clicked tighter, biting into her skin. You're making a fool of yourself, Huxley, Marin said calmly after he finished restraining her. Is your body camera recording? Huxley paused. He looked down at the small, square camera attached to his chest. The indicator light was dark. He leaned toward her, and a conspiratorial smirk spread across his face. Must be malfunctioning, he whispered mockingly. Looks like it's your word against mine, Agent, and here in Oak Brook Valley they always believe me. Marin closed her eyes briefly. She did not feel fear. She felt only a deep, exhausting sadness for every person this man had terrorized before her. You have no idea what you've just done, she said quietly. Huxley grabbed her by the upper arm, spun her around, and shoved her against the trunk. I know exactly what I've done. I'm taking out the trash. He removed the radio microphone from his shoulder and pressed the transmission button. Dispatch, this is Unit 4. I have one female in custody for illegal possession of a firearm, resisting arrest, and possession of forged federal identification. Send a tow truck to my location on Route 119 near the old station. Copy, Unit 4, the dispatcher replied through the static. Tow service has been notified. Do you need backup? Huxley looked at Marin, bruised, handcuffed, and leaning against the vehicle. He smiled with the satisfaction of a man who believed he had won. Negative, dispatch. I have everything completely under control. Marin raised her face toward the dark sky. Her breath formed pale clouds in the freezing air as the cruiser's lights flashed around her. Then she tilted her head, listening toward the highway behind them. Do you hear that, Officer Huxley? She asked with eerie calmness. Huxley frowned and lowered his radio. Hear what? That low vibration. The faintest trace of a smile touched the corner of Marin's mouth. It sounds like a powerful engine. She listened again. Actually, it sounds like several of them. Huxley turned toward the dark highway. At first, there was nothing but the sound of insects and wind moving through the trees. Then he felt it beneath his boots. A deep, rhythmic vibration traveled through the asphalt. Headlights suddenly appeared over the distant rise. Then another pair, and another. 4 massive, unmarked, matte black Chevrolet Suburbans emerged from the darkness in a tight, aggressive diamond formation. They were moving at extraordinary speed. No sirens were active, but as the vehicles closed in on the traffic stop, their front grills erupted with a blinding storm of red and blue LED lights. Huxley stepped away from Marin, his eyes widening in confusion. What the hell, he muttered. His hand instinctively moved toward his weapon. The lead Suburban did not simply pull over. It slammed on its brakes, slid across the loose gravel, and stopped at an angle that completely blocked Huxley's patrol cruiser from moving forward. The second and third vehicles boxed the cruiser in from behind and from the side. The fourth stopped directly in front of Marin's Taurus. Dust and gravel exploded into the air, illuminated by the chaotic intersection of emergency lights. Before the tires had stopped turning, every door opened at once. Federal agents, do not move. Drop your weapon. Drop it now. Commands erupted from every direction. A dozen men and women in heavy olive green tactical gear poured from the vehicles. Their Kevlar vests were marked with enormous yellow FBI letters, and each agent carried an M4 carbine rifle. They moved with terrifying coordinated precision, forming a heavily armed semicircle around Officer Grant Huxley. A constellation of red laser dots appeared across his chest. Huxley froze with his hand hovering above his holster. The arrogant sneer disappeared from his face. In its place came a sickly pallor. His knees began to tremble. Special Agent Reed Calloway stepped out of the passenger side of the lead Suburban. He wore no helmet, only a tactical vest over a dress shirt, with his badge displayed prominently on his belt. He walked directly toward Huxley, his expression filled with controlled fury. "Keep your hands exactly where they are, officer," Calloway ordered. His voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Calloway walked past the stunned local officer and approached Marin. He pulled a master key from his tactical vest and stepped behind her. The handcuffs unlocked and dropped onto the pavement with a metallic clatter. Marin rolled her shoulders, rubbed the deep red marks around her wrists, and released a long, steady breath. Then she turned toward Huxley. The balance of power had shifted with the force of a tectonic plate breaking apart. The self-appointed predator of Oak Brook Valley suddenly appeared to be the smallest, most frightened man on the road. Marin walked slowly toward him. The tactical agents kept their rifles trained on Huxley, creating a clear path for her. She stopped directly in front of him and extended her hand. "My badge," she said softly. Huxley's hands shook uncontrollably. Using 2 fingers, he carefully reached into his pocket, terrified that any sudden movement would cause the agents surrounding him to open fire. He removed the leather credential case and handed it to her. Marin accepted it, opened the case, and brushed a small piece of lint from the gold shield. She examined it before looking back into Huxley's eyes. "Looks real to me," she whispered. The road fell silent except for the mechanical hum of the idling Suburbans and Huxley's panicked, uneven breathing. His gaze darted between the red laser dots covering his uniform and the heavily armed agents surrounding him. The predator had become the prey. "Agent Calloway," Marin said without breaking eye contact with Huxley, "remove the officer's duty belt. We wouldn't want an accidental discharge." Calloway stepped forward, his face hardened by professional contempt. He did not ask Huxley to cooperate. In several fast practice movements, he unbuckled the heavy leather belt and removed Huxley's spare magazines, taser, pepper spray, and handcuffs. The belt struck the dirt with a heavy thud. "Now," Marin ordered, her voice carrying through the freezing air, "turn him around." Calloway gripped Huxley by the shoulders and spun him against the same trunk where Marin had been pinned. The poetic justice was obvious to everyone present. Calloway removed a pair of heavy-duty restraints from his vest and tightened them around Huxley's wrists. The plastic closed with a harsh final sound. "You can't do this," Huxley stammered. His voice had lost all of its earlier strength and arrogance. "I'm a police officer. This is my jurisdiction. Chief Dorian Kessler will take every one of your badges. You have no idea who you're dealing with." Marin gave a short, empty laugh. "Actually, Grant, I know exactly who I'm dealing with." Before Huxley could understand her meaning, another siren pierced the night. A sleek black Dodge Charger with government plates raced down Route 119 and stopped just beyond the federal perimeter. The doors opened, and Dorian Kessler, chief of the Oak Brook Valley Police Department, stepped out. Kessler was a heavy-set, red-faced man who preferred expensive tailored suits to a police uniform. He treated the department as though it were his personal militia. "What in the hell is happening here?" Kessler shouted as he marched toward the perimeter with the confidence of a man who believed himself untouchable. "Who authorized a federal operation in my town? Stand down! I order all of you to stand down." Calloway raised one hand. 2 tactical agents immediately moved forward, holding their M4 rifles at the low-ready position and blocking Kessler's path. "Chief Dorian Kessler," Marin announced. She stepped from behind the wall of agents and into the blinding glare of the headlights. After smoothing the front of her gray hoodie, she looked remarkably composed. "You arrived at the perfect moment. We were just talking about you." Kessler's face turned a deep, furious crimson. "Who the hell are you? Release my officer immediately, or I'm calling the governor. I have Preston Avery on speed dial. He's the best defense attorney in the state, and he'll bury your entire task force." "You are welcome to call Preston Avery, Chief," Marin replied conversationally, although her tone carried a lethal edge. "But you may have difficulty reaching him. The Bureau recently raided his downtown law offices." Kessler stopped. Attorney-client privilege does not apply when the attorney is actively concealing offshore bank accounts for a criminal organization, Marin continued. The color drained from Kessler's face so quickly that he looked physically ill. The blustering, seemingly untouchable police chief suddenly appeared old and frightened. Marin walked toward him and removed a thick, folded stack of papers from inside her jacket. She handed them to Kessler. He accepted them with trembling hands. "That is a federal indictment, Chief," she explained calmly. "It was signed by a federal judge. It charges you, Officer Huxley, and 14 other members of your department with violations of the Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act, systematic civil rights abuses, and conspiracy to commit money laundering." Still restrained against the Taurus, Huxley released a weak, pathetic sound. "Chief, what is she talking about?" Marin turned toward him, her eyes becoming cold. "You believe this was a random traffic stop, Grant. You thought you had gotten lucky when you saw a black woman alone on a dark road, someone you could bully and intimidate." She slowly shook her head. "Operation Silent Ledger has been watching you throughout this entire investigation. We knew where you parked. We knew whom you profiled. I drove past your position because we needed to record you committing a felony civil rights violation under color of law. Your actions, captured through a live microphone, gave us what we needed to activate the arrest warrants." At the downtown Philadelphia FBI field office, the fluorescent lights inside a windowless interrogation room buzzed quietly. Dawn was beginning to spread over the city's skyline outside, but inside the room, time seemed to have stopped. Grant Huxley sat slumped in a metal chair. The orange jumpsuit issued by the federal holding facility stood in stark contrast to the dark blue police uniform he had once worn like a tyrant's cape. He looked small, defeated, and completely exhausted. The heavy metal door opened. Marin entered after finally taking the hot shower she had wanted. She now wore a sharply tailored black suit, and the gold FBI shield hanging from a chain around her neck gleamed beneath the bright lights. She carried a thick manila folder. When she dropped it onto the metal table, the sound made Huxley flinch. He did not look up. "Here is how this works, Grant," Marin began, pulling out a chair and sitting across from him. "Your union is not coming to rescue you. Chief Kessler is sitting in the cell block beside yours, crying and offering to identify every corrupt officer he knows in exchange for saving himself." Huxley swallowed. "And Preston Avery is facing decades in prison for facilitating wire fraud." "I was only doing my job," Huxley whispered. "Your job," Marin repeated evenly, "was to protect and serve. Instead, you acted as armed enforcement for Silas R. Voss." At the sound of the name, Huxley's head snapped upward. His eyes widened with absolute terror. Silas R. Voss was the phantom of Oak Brook Valley, a reclusive billionaire real estate developer who secretly operated one of the largest illegal sports betting and money laundering organizations on the East Coast. "We know Voss bought Kessler," Marin continued. She opened the folder, revealing high-resolution surveillance photographs. "We know Kessler ordered officers like you to drive away, intimidate, or falsely arrest anyone who came too close to the warehouses operated through Voss's shell companies. We know you used your badge as a weapon to protect a criminal empire." Marin leaned forward and rested her elbows on the table. Any trace of empathy had vanished from her expression. In its place was the unyielding pursuit of justice. "Silas Voss was arrested aboard his private jet at Teterboro Airport," she said softly. "The entire house of cards has collapsed, Grant. It's over." Huxley stared at the photographs. The reality of his situation came crashing down on him with the crushing weight of a collapsing building. The arrogant laughter that had echoed through the woods now seemed to belong to another lifetime. Slowly he lowered his face into his restrained hands. His shoulders shook as he began to cry in silence. Marin watched him without pity. She felt only a deep sense of closure. She stood and picked up the folder. "You wanted to know whether my badge was real, Officer Huxley," she said as she turned toward the door. She paused and looked back at the broken man sitting at the table. "You are about to discover exactly how real it is for the decades you will spend behind bars." The heavy metal door slammed shut. The locking mechanism engaged with one final decisive click. If this true crime story kept you on the edge of your seat, press the like button and subscribe to the channel for more incredible real-life stories of justice being served. What would you have done if you had been in Agent Whitaker's position? Share your thoughts in the comments and send this video to someone who enjoys a powerful plot twist. Stay safe, remain vigilant, and we will see you in the next story.